Hey friends, I'm here today with a really special guest. His name is Veeshesh Sunassy. So Veeshesh is, by day job, Real Markets Time Coordinator. He's also the president of the North American Young Generation Nuclear Durham chapter and also a co-lead for the Nuclear for Climate. He's been involved in some really cool initiatives like leading the nuclear energy industry in the COP27 conference that just took place in Egypt. So I want to learn about all of his experiences there and also just really involved in the clean energy space. So Veeshesh, welcome.
Thank you, Osama. Thank you for having. Excited to share my experience and any question today. No holding back.
Tell me a little bit about your journey in NAYGN, in the young generation nuclear community, and also the climate change conference COP27. How was that?
It was awesome, to be honest. So basically, came into the nuclear industry in 2016 as a co-op student. 2018 is when I started working, really got a full-time job with in the nuclear industry. So I was like, I love my job, but how can I make it more fun? And I heard about a group, an organization called North American Young Generation in Nuclear. And at my work, there's a specific chapter, which is the Durham chapter. I just went to one of their events, and it was called Profiles in Leadership. And this is where they invited different senior leaders in the industry to come and speak to us about what's happening and what's exciting in this industry. Went there because a friend of mine was going as well. Sat there for 2 hours. After that, I told that friend I want to be involved with that initiative. So that's how I got into NAYGN, and I started as the vice president of the Durham chapter in 2019, and then in 2021 I became the chapter president. And so a lot of things NAYGN do is public outreach. So going out to schools, to universities, holding learning sessions to our members. And we target a lot of already through our events, people who are already in the nuclear industry. So even for us, the Durham chapter, which has Pickering and Darlington, it's a lot of people already know about nuclear, know about what it can bring towards the economy, towards the clean energy space. So it's easy to go to schools, universities to kind of explain, because these students either have their parents, their friends, their brothers, or their sisters already in the industry in some way or the other. So I was like, what's my next step from there? It's like, okay, how to go international. So last year, there was a request to join the delivery team for Nuclear for Climate, and I was like, let me try my shot, right? So it's something I'm passionate about. Again, advocating, explaining to people why we need nuclear, and I'm like, let me apply. Got the role, so that's how I got involved with the Nuclear for Climate delivery team. Went to COP27, and I'm like, this is the conference we need to be, because why we go there, we speak to policymakers, to climate activists, even to head of states about the importance nuclear plays, whether for the electricity, in the medicine field, in food and agriculture, how it helps and all these range of issues. And it was an exciting experience. So a lot of stuff happened there. I know that guy because I know him. He has lots of questions about it. So I'll let him ask the tough questions.
Awesome. No, Veeshesh, that's great. Thanks for giving an overview of NAYGN and what you do. Climate Change Conference, COP27 is, or COP for those that don't know, is the world's largest climate change conference, right? And I think every year they have a different location. So this last year took place in Egypt. The year before it was in the UK, right?
It was in Glasgow, UK. That's correct.
Nice, yeah. Nice. So, what I want to know is, let's start from basics, right? What is COP? Give us a little bit of insight, but also, how was your experience there? How was it like experiencing COP for the first time?
If I had one word to describe that, that would be amazing with 3 exclamation points. That was how exciting it was to be there. It was my first conference, so and just as a background, before that, 2 years ago, I didn't know what was COP. So COP, you guys know, in the nuclear industry, lots of acronyms. United Nations is no different. Let me tell you, lots of acronyms there as well. COP, short for Conference of Parties. It's the United Nations Climate Change Conference. That's where policymakers, world leaders, climate activists meet every year to discuss the next steps about climate change. So as Osama was saying, it happens every year, started in 1997. So every year it's COP1, COP2, COP3. So this year was the 27th COP, which was in Egypt. And this year it's going to be COP28, which is going to be held in the UAE, Dubai. But basically, in terms of what we did at COP27. So what's important to understand, and things that you learn again, we shouldn't think that nuclear is just in its silos. We need nuclear. It's like there's a bigger problem there, right? What are we trying to solve? We ask ourselves that. So basically, there's a climate crisis. Temperatures increasing every year. We've been seeing lots of flooding, natural catastrophes. So what are the solutions? There's renewable, but also nuclear is great to complement that. So we go there to speak to policymakers, climate activists about how nuclear needs to be part of that electricity mix. And that's why one of our key messages is net zero needs nuclear, and also clean energy for all. So we have a technology neutral approach where we say we know that solar and wind is going to play a big part, but we also need nuclear to complement that mix for several reasons. So let me share some of the impacts we had and some of the type of people we spoke to, for example. So it starts from head of state. So one of our team members, she's from Glasgow. She happened to have a Scottish flag on her. She just bumped into the Scottish Prime Minister, Scottish Premier Nicola Sturgeon. And her party is basically, so Scotland has nuclear power plants, we know that, but her party is against building new nuclear. So when we met her, we had the opportunity to engage with her and ask, what was the reason why her party was against that, and they are not considering new nuclear, because we all know the benefits it brings in terms of how it helped get us to the net carbon zero, in terms of how it can help in terms of decarbonizing other sectors that's hard to abate sectors like transportation, heating, these sort of things. So that was an opportunity for us to engage with a head of states. So that's one sort of level. The other one, we had a conversation with a United Nations ambassador. He's actually the ambassador to Kenya. He was actually the president of the Security Council 2 years ago, and he chaired the Security Council, and he came and told us that, you know what, Kenya is very interested to make the leap and add nuclear as part of their electricity mix, but he's having lots of concerns or challenges that the Security Council is asking them questions about the energy security piece, because we all know what's happening and with the invasion of Russia to Ukraine, with the Zaporizhzhia plant, Russia taking over. So they're questioning the security piece, and Africa being prone to some security issues as well. What's going to happen there? What are we doing? So he came to us, spoke for about 30 minutes to 45 minutes with a pretty busy guy, but he still took the time, wanted to understand like the other benefits we brought in terms, again, we retouch on like the clean energy for all, net zero needs nuclear, how we can help in terms of the SMRs that's coming, how we can help with the hydrogen production as well in terms of clean hydrogen. And at the end, he told us that, and I still remember, he said, you guys convinced me. I gotta bring that back to the Security Council. I'm considering that again.
Nice.
So these are the type of people or policymakers we get to speak to. And just as a context, you said COP27 was held in Egypt, so Africa, and right now in the world, 10% of the electricity, global electricity production comes from nuclear. That comes from 32 countries plus Taiwan, but only one country from Africa. So this is South Africa. Egypt is currently in the process of building its first nuclear reactor in the hub. So having Kenya or even other countries coming in and said they'll be interested, that was big. And then a third kind of sort of people we spoke to was climate activists. So I remember someone from Cote d'Ivoire who does a lot of activism in terms of environmental stuff. He came to us and you know what? He told us frankly he had no clue like nuclear was used to produce energy, and like he does a lot of activism, right? And he's like, oh wow, you guys, we showed him how much carbon emission nuclear emitted compared to other dirty sources like coal, fossil, compared to hydro, solar, etc. And has like, oh, I need to take that back. So I need to add nuclear as part of my activism. What can I do? So we put him in touch with the African young generation in nuclear for him to educate himself and then start bringing that back to his community, to his leaders. And it's as I was telling you, Osama, it's the conference we need to be, because I went to several nuclear conferences before, but we speak to the same people, which we know, like, what are we trying to convince them of, right? So let's collaborate, yes, but then take that collaboration, let's go to these targeted conferences where we can have a bigger impact, where we can influence people that can take that back to their community, back to their country, back to their town, and they do their activism. And I know it took a long time to answer that, but I was watching one of the Obama, he just did an Obama Foundation, and someone asked him, like he was doing a town hall, and he was asking, why did you start a foundation? What's the purpose? And he answered that him and Michelle has a lot of values, but two is not enough to make a difference. So if they can replicate that, take the two, energize leaders, young people to share the same values as them, these people just go, again, they'll have more connection, spread that. It's like a pyramid scheme. Like, it's funny, we were in Egypt and we're speaking about pyramid now. So similar to us, right? So we go there, Nuclear for Climate, that's a grassroots initiative. We had 98 volunteers. So with that 98, if we were able to each one speak to like 20 people that we influence, so 100 times 20, it's like to 2,000. That 2,000 can bring that to their country. Each one, it's like a pyramid. It keeps growing. It keeps growing. So
that's incredible. No, it's so cool to know how influential that conference is. Like the level of influence that you can have on, like just you mentioned, just that the leader from Kenya or state's secretary and people that are going to go back to their home nations and kind of, share awareness, right, about this technology they may not be aware of. And also answering those hard questions. I think the question of energy security is actually not a very easy question to answer. Tell me about your highlights. Like, what were some of the top highlights from your time at the conference?
For sure. And one thing, just to piggyback on what you said, like every country is different. And I remember I was sharing a cab with one of the people who was staying at the same hotel, and she's from Japan, and she's part of the Japanese government. And she's like, I do believe in nuclear, but like, I live close to Fukushima, and with all the radiation and all that happened, it's a trauma. So like, how do you answer those questions? So you get asked a lot of tough questions that you don't often encounter, and it opens your mind. So every country is different. We don't go to every country, every state person, every policymakers and say we need nuclear, right? We listen to them. It's like we start the conversation like, what's your energy production? What's your mix? The carbon, like some countries are already doing good. They are like lots of hydros, so it's good. Getting back to my highlights, always at the end, it's like it's a human emotion. Like at the end of everything, you think about like what's the best part, and for me, every time it's the people. it's the people you meet. For me, that was, I've met a lot of people, but like seeing the people that, especially with the team we work with, like the delivery team, we work for about 9 months, from March to November, so that's about like 7 months before the conference. Getting to see them, spend time with them, share our views, I think that was the best part for me. But we did a lot of fun stuff too. So, for example, with the team and always with the team, so we did a flash mob, which so basically in a common area in the conference, it's where there's a media zone. We went and we hired a rapper, Baba Brinkman. He's Canadian, I think. You know him?
I've heard of him.
Oh, is he Canadian?
I've heard of some
Oh,
stuff.
okay.
I'm not sure if he's Canadian.
Okay, I'm not sure, but I heard something. But okay, Baba Brinkman, he just came, rap about nuclear, and we were all dancing, doing jump squats, lunges, push-ups. Everyone was coming and see us, and the theme was nuclear for fitness.
Wow.
So nuclear, we need a fit grid, so nuclear is fit, so we need to be part of the grid. And we did one for each week, so it was fun. And after that, we handed out bananas, which had a sign about like how much radiation this banana emit compared to a nuclear plant. So we're looking for creative ways, and it was fun and it was exciting. So at the same time, we as a young group, we were having a good time, but at the same time, having the impact there, right? Speaking to people, finding creative ways. We had a polar bear, we had two polar bears actually, a white one, so Mountie, the polar bear, so kind of a polar bear itself, and a brown bear, maybe a grizzly bear, called Bella, which two people will come and take pictures with it, and yeah, so that was the highlight. So and I'll end with that. For me, the best highlight was the people. I was also part of a panel discussion with the International Atomic Energy Agency Director General, Rafael Grossi. Usually, we ask him question in panel. We flipped the role this time. Nice. He asked us questions, so I was part of a diverse mix of young generation people was in the panel. We were 4 in total, and he got to ask us question. It was very good to hear his perspective. Just him being here, having the time, he showed us that he values a lot what we do in terms of advocacy. So that was a big highlight for me, and something that maybe I would never have imagined I would have the chance to do.
That's really cool, Veeshesh. Great to hear about the highlights and the polar bears. You know, Generation Atomic, right? Love Eric's initiatives there, and you know, bring that spirit of nuclear advocacy to COP. So, you know, is there enough representation from the nuclear energy industry at COP, and this year, or you know, compared to other years? And also, how can we improve that if there is improvement needed? How can we encourage participation in COP?
For sure. Like, let's go back and kind of in history, let's say. So first big delegation that Nuclear for Climate had started in 2015, COP21, which was in Paris. We had about 15 volunteers at that time. I had a single booth. So it keep going. So that's, you have COP 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. So that was the 7th COP we went. And now in that COP, it was 98 volunteers who came. So that's a big jump. So in terms of physical representation, but also in terms of space we had as well, that improved. So we had 2 booths basically for Nuclear for Climate, a main one and a mini one that Generation Atomic was holding as well. Plus we had the IAEA booth, so the International Atomic Energy Industry, and that was their first time they were having a booth. So we were having 3 booths, more people, so that was very positive. So you could see in terms of us going there, it's having an impact. And even like speaking to those people, that was my first COP. And when I'm talking to people just around and I'm like, hey, we are nuclear for climate. We have a booth there. This is our initiative. And I'm like, oh yeah, we came to your booth last year. And it's like, it's nice to hear that it's having an impact. People are kind of remembering and like, oh, you guys did a good job. I remember the polar bear, or I remember Bella the bear, and I had a picture with it. So that's good. That's from our side. But I think what's more important is from the other side, from the public side, or from the stand side. I think that's where things need to be improved, because tomorrow we can send 200 people, 500 people, but if the other side, which I mean the policymakers, still don't want to make a move, that will make a difference, whether we send 1,500 or 500. So I got the time, as well as other delegates got the time, to tour a lot of the booth. So the booth is basically for people who think of the Dubai Expo or like of big conferences. It's each country have their own space to kind of showcase like what they are doing for climate change. And when you think of that, lots of countries have, oh yeah, they're decarbonizing the grid by increasing their renewable capacity. But guess, Osama, so 200 countries there, right? How many countries had said that nuclear was part of their decarbonization plan, at least physically in their booth?
It's a hard one, considering 32 nations have nuclear energy. Plus Taiwan. So let's say half them, 15, like more, a little bit more, less than half, 15.
Only one.
One? Which country was that?
UAE. So it was United Arab Emirates. This was the only one, and they mentioned that. So they just connected their third reactor online, right? Baraka. They mentioned that their target is to have 25% nuclear as part of the energy mix. But all these countries, even though a lot of them has a big mix, like France, US has a lot of nuclear energy, like South Korea building new, China building new, but still they didn't put nuclear energy when you think it would be a common sense to put that alongside renewable, because it's a big piece. We all know like the science behind it. That's not an issue. So that's the first thing we noticed. Second thing, COP, first 2 days, there's a plenary session where the policymakers, the head of states actually, so either the prime minister or the president of that country, have a time to make their national statement, similar to the United Nations General Assembly. We got the time. So again, there was about 130 world leaders who came personally, make their national statement. I was able to go on the second day, so about 35 of them. Again, I'll ask you again to answer the question on behalf of the public. How many head of states you think mention nuclear as playing a big part in terms of reaching the net carbon zero?
Well, considering politicians don't really, they're politicians, so they're usually at the whims of the public opinion. I would say maybe 20.
Divide by 20. So one. One. Only one. It was President Emmanuel Macron from France. He was the only one who said, we need nuclear to be part of the mix. So when you ask me, like, what sort of representation we need, we are there. We go there. We spoke about, like, what kind of impact we had in terms of reaching out to, like, the policymakers. But we can have 100, we can have 500. But if these people don't make the bold decision, it's not going to happen. We can have all the goodwill in the world to go there, right? Advocate, spend our 2 weeks on our own time, but then nothing happens. So this is the other side, and that's why a key thing we are doing more and more this year is how can we engage with these governments from a very early perspective, right? And that's something we've heard that the UAE did at first, right? The nuclear industry, they reach out, like, how can we enrich? How can we include that, right? Because it's a big part. We want to showcase the good stories, share the good stories, So the Nuclear for Climate team definitely a big part of this year's like how can we drive that engagement up with government. And again, like it's targeted. We're not reaching out to 200 governments. We need to be very strategic in terms of who we think like we really need to reach out, and then try to see like what sort of engagement, like how can we, because the facts are there, right? The science is there. The IPCC report, which is the UN Science Council report, basically released that they said, like to reach the net carbon zero goals by 2050, we need to increase the nuclear capacity in the world by 550 gigawatts, right? 550 gigawatts. Just as a reference, last decade we only added 55 gigawatts of nuclear, and about 49 gigawatts of nuclear was retired. So net was like 9 gigawatts, but we need to add 550 new, right? So they proposed 4 scenarios looking at different things that can happen, and all of them had increased nuclear capacity.
It's like 550 reactors, right? Around 1,000 megawatts each.
So a lot need to do. Again, like 2023 now. We're not even in 2022. We're on 2023 now. So 2050, it's coming quick. And again, like countries have to be bold. We are in Canada. We know like we speak a lot about how it's an exciting time to be in the energy industry, not just nuclear, just energy in general, because lots of things are happening for our industry. Like we're speaking about lots increasing the renewable capacity. We're speaking about SMRs, new nuclear. We're speaking about hydrogen. We're speaking about so electrifying the grid in terms of transportation. We're speaking about even the heating system, right? How can we electrify that? So that's going to increase the demand, right? You need energy to kind of be able to match that, and on top you need clean energy, because now you want to reach net carbon zero. So very exciting time to be in the industry.
Absolutely. No, that's great to understand. How important COP is to getting that message out. But the question I have for you, Veeshesh, is how do countries take that information, take those lessons learned from COP, and really translate those into energy policy or major decision making? So, like for example, like how does Canada do that, or maybe other countries?
Yeah, that's where it starts, right? So basically, big thing, like most people have heard about it, but good to touch on it. The Paris Treaty, right? The Paris Agreement. So this is where a lot of things starts. You'll hear big discussion. So that's basically that was from COP21 in 2015. About 190 countries came in, said, okay, we need to reach net carbon zero by 2050. So we need to limit the temperature by 1.5 degrees C. So what happens now, based on the treaty, the onus is now on the country to come up with their own plan how to reach that. So it takes it from the policy from COP, right? We need that, right? Countries ratified it. Now it's each country come up with your own plan, your own timeline, and every 5 years they gotta report back to that during COP Council, basically, about what's happening with the plan. And they have to update their plan every 5 years and have at least better target. So take it from the policy, now you reach the country. So what country do to have their own plan? It's called National Determined Contribution, NDC. So if you go on the United Nations website, or if you just Google NDCs, again, another acronym I'm throwing at you, you'll see each country have their own plan. So Canada, for example, if you look at their National Determined Contribution, they said by 2030, they'll have to reduce, to reach the net carbon zero by 2050, they will have to reduce their carbon emission by 40 to 45%, based on the 2005 level. So that's their target, how they're going to, in terms of their timeline. So 2030, reduce that, and then 2050, have it reach the net carbon zero, right? So in step. And it's interesting. So US, for example, has even bolder target. For them, it's 50 to 54% reduction of their carbon emission by 2030. So each countries have their own thing. It's very it's I would very like one of the call to action for me and even for you, Osama. And I'll ask you next week, okay? Check out NDC. See a couple of countries, and it's interesting. Like even those little islands, what are they doing, right? So they put their plan, what they're gonna reduce, the timeline, and how they're gonna do it. So in Canada, we hear a lot about electrifying the transport system, EV, for example, right? This is where it comes. SMRs, new plants. So it will be built in the NDCs from a government perspective, right? And it's very interesting how different countries have different strategies to put that policy into place. So some countries like France, Spain, Canada has it as a law. So it's a law by 2050, you got to reach net carbon zero. Some other countries have it just as a policy, not as a law, and other countries it's just a pledge, right? So I pledge to reach that, but there's nothing that kind of binds them. So that's very interesting, right? Now finish by country, like Canada-wide, like we have province, so each province take that. Again, that's where the jargon, net carbon zero by this year, they will take that, and now every company, including the company I work with, they will take these plans and try to see with what they have, how can they help with this.
That's great. No, it's really interesting how countries are either making it law, which is great. Canada's making that a law, has made that a law, and what does that mean, right? Does that mean that Canada will take more of a pragmatic approach to its reductions, to its emissions reductions? And tell us a little bit about like the whole structure of how, from a Canadian perspective, how is Canada leading their climate change plan, and what role does nuclear play?
Yeah, nuclear plays a big role, especially in Ontario, right? Ontario, the good thing is Ontario, a lot of countries take example from Ontario because we've decarbonized the grid. Basically, we shut down the last coal plant years ago, right? So it's mostly clean sources of power. So in terms of nuclear, the SMR action plan that they release, right? So these are the thing where Canada knows that nuclear will play a big role, and this is where a new nuclear SMRs, you've seen provinces like kind of signing memorandum of understanding, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, etc., right? They want to work together because some places which is very remote, like SMR will play a huge role because one, you need to understand like the electricity mix, and then like how to abate kind of economies such as heating, transportation, like chemical industry. This is where nuclear plays another role. So this is key, right? So that's for nuclear in terms of the Canada plan, and then the other we know the carbon taxation. We know with the EV, electric vehicle, right? By certain year, we need to have electric vehicle, right? And then they speak a lot in terms of climate financing, right? How to fund, because money drives a lot of that, right? You need to subsidize a lot of things because by its own, like it won't stand.
Interesting. That's it's cool to know that there's so many dimensions to this climate change action plan, right? It doesn't seem like an easy goal. Tell me a little bit about Cairo. How was your time in Cairo? How did you like it? And also, what's Egypt's perspective? Because they were hosting COP this year. What were your thoughts on the country itself and their climate change plans, and how do you think they did a good job in hosting the conference this year?
Yes, yeah, I had a great time. It was in Sharm el Sheikh actually, which is
Where is that for those that don't
it's it's South Sinai Peninsula kind of. I don't know if I'm not a big in geography, but it's close to the Jordan side. So it's an hour plane ride from Cairo. But yeah, they did. That's not. It's tough as to have 30,000 delegates, high level delegates in your country, right? But they did a great job. I had a good time. Food is always good. People are nice again. I always speak about people, right? Nice people. A lot of the United Nation kind of volunteers were from Egypt, which they had, and they made the experience really good. So thanks for all the Egyptians there who helped with that. And in terms of Egypt climate plan, and as I mentioned, Egypt, second African countries to add nuclear after South Africa, they haven't been connected to the grid yet, but they're on the process. So a lot for other countries in Africa and other places of the world to learn what Egypt is doing, and that was good. And we heard a lot of, for example, President Biden came in for one day to make a national statement for the U.S. He spoke a lot about collaboration with Egypt about adding about, I believe, 5 gigawatts of new renewable solar and wind to the electricity mix and phasing down fossil from that, right? So that's good that they are taking a place towards the right direction. So it's important. Like it's talk is important, but like we need action. So like that action that we already having nuclear, they're already adding to their renewable mix. It's very good. Yeah.
It's awesome, and I know Egypt's also building 4 new nuclear reactors,
Exactly, yes.
VVER 1000. So did they ever mention anything to do with their new nuclear projects?
I haven't personally heard them saying a lot, especially in the booth. They had a big booth. They had a nuclear event as well that they spoke about it. So that was good, right? So they've engaged and to tie that back to what Nuclear for Climate do again, like when you think about Nuclear for Climate, we're a grassroots organization. We go to the ground and we support local organization too. So we had, as part of the delivery team, but also as part of the volunteering team, lots of lots of people from Egypt. We had PhD who were doing university in Cairo, 2 PhD people who were working with in the medicinal field in Egypt, having them as part of the team, learning from us from other countries as well, so they can take that back to their team, to their community again was key. So that's something that the Nuclear for Climate team is doing for at the UAE as well, having a strong UAE support tied to Nuclear for Climate. It's going to be key because we want to support local initiative as well.
That's great. That's great. Tell us a little bit about Nuclear for Climate. What's the difference between, the NAYGNs or the YGNs, the Young Generation Nuclear Organizations, or the other advocacy groups like Generation Atomic, and the Nuclear for Climate? Tell us a little bit about what is Nuclear for Climate.
Nuclear for Climate, it's a grassroots organization, so mostly of youth volunteers. That the goal is to educate and engage with policymakers, with climate activists, with the general public about all the benefits that nuclear brings, not just for energy. We speak a lot about energy, electricity, right? But also we think of nuclear, how it plays a role for food, agriculture, in terms of medicine, isotopes, right? Desterilization, water desalination. So, and all these, we tie that back to these 17 sustainable development goals that the United Nations have, right? So that's our goal, right? And basically what we are a network of organizations, more than 150 associations, societies, YGN, Women in Nuclear, under that umbrella, under one logo, where we are not technology specific. We just advocate for what's best for the climate, including what's best for nuclear, right? So that's why our common message is clean energy for all. Together is better. Together is better means that we know we need wind and solar, but we need nuclear to complement that mix. So that together piece is important. And of course, the big one, net zero needs nuclear. And so that's about the group. So we do all these fun things during COP, like in terms of to reach the advocacy pitch events, right, which is the more formal, but also the informal things like, you know, walking out with beers, people coming and taking pictures at the same time. Hey, you know, like we'll have a card with, we need nuclear to be part of the mix, right? Yeah. Save, you know, like these things. Distribute bananas, as I was saying, to for people to have, you know, safe space to speak about radiation. We do like these flash mobs, kind of a fun way as well, a good community, and it's, you know, it's very exciting, and encourage people to check the Nuclear for Climate LinkedIn or Twitter. Check out what we do. You'll understand like the big impact we have, right? So youth activism, and so basically, yeah, it regroups a lot of these generation atomic, young generation in nuclear, women in nuclear, these other group from like different countries, right? We had people from delegates from Sudan, from Japan, from Brazil, from Canada, from US, from Poland, from Italy, from South Africa, from Nigeria, from Ghana. It's like losing count here how many countries. But again, like looking at it, like having that one community, like one common goal. We all want what's best for the climate, right? Because we know some countries are more prone to suffering from disasters, you know, like Africa with those extreme drought we saw last year, Pakistan with the extreme flooding. So what can we do? We are all one world, right? United together.
It's really inspiring to hear that message. Question I had that, you know, another question I had was, what was your role in the Nuclear for Climate group, and also what's your new role as a co-lead for that group? It's pretty incredible that you're leading such an international initiative. So tell me a little bit about that.
So I started with being the sponsorship lead for the delivery team. So the delivery team is actually the team who prepares. It's about 10 people. We prepare the 2-week agenda for COP in terms what are we delivering, what are we doing in terms of events, in terms of advocacy, in terms of a booth, how it should look like. So my first role was to bring sponsors, collaborators that can provide that financial support. So we are able to secure a booth, we are able to buy bananas, we are able to ship stuff to Egypt, right?
Sponsor bananas?
Sponsor. Yeah. Those Egyptian bananas were very good, though. I had a lot of bananas there. So I was able to do some extra push-ups from that, but good bananas. So I like it. The fruits in Egypt very good though, mangoes as well. Yeah. So that started with that, and then towards the end, I had more towards helping the leadership team, right? In terms of, so I had 98 delegates, so kind of managing those 98 delegates in terms of providing direction, like what's the message we should push across, right? So that was my role. COP27. Again, we had a fantastic team, fantastic leaders actually as well. You know, some of them too. So this year I was like, what's my next step? And I kind of wanted to lead the team. So myself and the Hannah Fenwick, we will be leading the Nuclear for Climate delivery team again this year again. So again, like we think about what we achieve not only at COP27, COP26 as well, which is a great baseline. How do we move forward, and how do we make that better for us, and also like have more impact? And like those two things I kind of touch on, right? In terms of communications, right? How can we be better at communicating very different messages to different target groups? And the second thing, which is very key, how do we break our bubble? We need to stop like nuclear people speaking to nuclear people, right? So when we speak about events, how do we get to a French pavilion? How do we get to a UK pavilion to speak about nuclear? How can we get someone from the Sustainable Development Goal to be okay with them coming to speak at 1 hour of our panel? So that's two big areas that we're going to look at for this year. So we just started the recruitment period in terms of getting that international team. And again, it's great work because you get to see a lot of people doing great job in their community, right? So how can we bring them, not only help Nuclear for Climate, but help them explore their potential, right? And now to a greater target, greater audience, right? So a win-win for both, like the organization and also the people, where we see like they are ambassadors for nuclear, but how can we help them, like, you know, fully get there. So really excited to lead that, to co-lead that team. Sure, we'll have an exciting team, lots of opportunities again. But again, like for me, the two things, like I kind of ask myself, like, what kind of impact do we want to have, right? And at the end, what sort of legacy? How do we want people to think of us, right? So that's the two messages I have for the team, right? So think of that when we go there, because after the 2 weeks of COP, we want to think back, okay, yeah, we've met what we wanted.
Yeah, maximizing impact at such an important venue. You know, it's interesting to understand your strategy behind COP, right? And also learn about how, you know, since you've had that experience, you want the new batch of attendees that are promoting nuclear energy to maximize that impact. So and the impact extends to like those leaders, right? Those people that are making those key decisions, those key decision makers. Do you have a goal in mind, a short-term goal for a specific country, or are you just looking at maximizing impact across the entire organization? And also, how are you going to measure metrics as well? Like, how are you going to measure your ratio for success at the next COP?
So we have a good baseline. I told you only one country had nuclear, right? So it's, if we got two, it's like we beat last year. But no, we want to be 50% more, right? It's like, how do you report those numbers? But no, I think at first, so gonna target. I think for me, like internally, when I think of the impact, like we have to quantify it by numbers, right? At the end, we should like, okay, yeah, we've had 5 countries that had nuclear as part, and we helped kind of them. We were engaged with them, right? So having a number of countries that have nuclear energy as part of their expo or their display at their booth would be one thing. Like, I want to look back and say, okay, we did way better. We've reached out to 30, but 5 of them was able to kind of put that, have energy, right? And that's one, right? Because you won't believe how many people go to the booth, right, and kind of ask questions. So if you have nuclear there, even if we know that the country has to answer, right? So there's more representation of nuclear than just nuclear for climate. So that's one of the short-term goal. The second one, again, we can't control the narrative of politicians, so I can't quantify that. But in terms of communication and people we are able to send, can we keep going? As I said, 15 delegates at COP, 98 this year. What can we do next year? But also in terms of events, we had a bunch of events, about 10 events, 10, 15 events that Nuclear for Climate either held or was part of the panel. And most of it, that's the thing, most of it was like, you know, within a nuclear audience. We had one official United Nations event that was actually broadcasted on the UN website, right? So this is where you get that non-nuclear audience. So now, like, another challenge to my team and to the team is like, how many events can we do outside of the nuclear bubble, right? Because this is more the impact. sometimes it's not about the quantity, but about the quality. What are you able to impact? Yeah. Does it match your goal, right? Like, again, our goal is to like break out of the bubble, right? Inform and educate general public. So the more of these type of events we can have outside of our bubble, the more impactful will be, because these people will bring that back to their team again. So that being said, I think it will be exciting. I won't say it will be a smooth ride. Again, the best we can do is try. I don't want to hear like at the end of the day we didn't do that because we think it wouldn't be possible. I want to try. I'm okay with it not working, but I think we should try, right? And we're already in conversation with UAE again to see how we can have the government as part of, again, given they're gonna have 25% of nuclear as part of the electricity mix, to share the message that nuclear is important as well. Again, we're not promising we'll have a big nuclear sign on Burj Khalifa, but you know, anything that helps. It's gonna be a big plus for us, because then it's just more than our voice; it's other countries' voice as well.
Absolutely, I think a nuclear sign, maybe not a radioactive sign, but
we've asked the price, by the way. It's like $1 million US, so we're starting a GoFundMe.
Oh wow, nice! $1 million to broadcast on Burj Khalifa.
Yes.
For how many hours though?
Hours, no, seconds.
Okay. Yeah, it's a pretty big budget. So, Veeshesh, tell me a little bit about, like, you know, your ideal candidate. Like, what's your ideal candidate look like that you would bring to COP, right? Because you obviously don't want to bring just anyone in the industry, right? Because, you know, for example, sometimes technical engineers, they may not be the best communicators. Sometimes the best communicators may not have the technical knowledge, right? So it's really finding that balance. But tell me, what do you look for in the right candidates? And do you have examples? Do you have examples of candidates, you know, that were exceptional at this last year's COP?
For sure. So before I go into the kind, it depends. So first of all, we want to have a diverse team. Again, gender is one, religion is one, but also in terms of experience, right? We don't want to have everyone a researcher, or all communicators, or all technical. So there has to be a good mix between good team of research who can vet the stats, right? Communicators, because communicators is key. Without communicators, you can do great things, but then people don't know, right? And then the technical people who understand like the nuclear, like how it works to answer those technical questions. So diverse mix. But again, like we need the main characteristics, like team player, of course, right? But also a leader, right? In terms of having a vision, right? Asking themselves, okay, why am I here for? What am I solving? And then understanding will help them solve the problem they are here for, right? Have a bigger impact. So, for example, if someone asks the question, okay, I'm here to solve the communication piece. How can we communicate better with a non-nuclear audience? Then they can strategize like 3 ways we can reach that: plan A, plan B, plan C, and that's what's the best, right? Plan A can be 50% effective, 60%, rather than just giving instructions. So we're looking for leaders who can understand the big picture, what's happening in the world, like what are the things that's trending, what are people asking more about nuclear, and then kind of have a plan for their own committee, right? So there'll be different committees they can help. Communication is one. Events and activities is the other one. So understanding in terms of the ideal candidate will be able to understand what the world is speaking in terms of nuclear. Like, for example, people keep asking about new nuclear, for example, right? Should be an event we should have. Radiation. So be able to understand that and then conceptually put in a plan and a strategy that we can implement and debate. That's going to be key. And then again, like we look for people who, again, are excited to be in the team, want to play a big role, right? Again, it's myself. When I flew myself, I didn't expect how exciting, how fun, how impactful it would be. and it's looking back, I would do it again, right? And that's why I'm doing it again.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. It's great to see how much diversity plays such an important role, even in the nuclear narrative, right? Because when you think of the nuclear energy industry, sometimes we tend to think of our own nations, and I think of just Canada and exactly what we're doing here in the nation. But it's phenomenal to know that there's so much support from across the world as well. And also there's exceptional leaders out there, in the young generation nuclear community.
Basically, you need to be a nuclear advocate, and and there's different ways, right? You don't need to go to COP to do that, right? Sometimes just going to school, sometimes just speaking to your sister or brother, like, hey, nuclear, it's like you're a nuclear advocate, right? So share that passion, that work, that exciting industry you are part of. It's great. It's like, again, like we're speaking a lot about COP, but again, like going back to the grassroots or the local influence we have, and that's key, right? Because that's where it starts, like going to schools, to universities, like engaging your members, doing social. Like the social is important too, because it's like we are people at the end of the day, so we want to be a place where we feel included, we feel that there's it's great to spend time with similar people, and that's where the young generation, that's where women in nuclear and so many other organizations, NGOs do, right? For sure, yeah.
Absolutely. What's one funny thing? This last year I was invited to COP to attend. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it because of another conference I had in parallel. But I found that my younger siblings, they're in high school and they're watching COP online, right? They're watching that in their science class, their science, science teachers, putting that on live for them to see what developments are taking place. So when my siblings told me that this is taking place in their science class or their physics class, I was mind blown. I'm like, wow, like it's incredible and so inspiring how young kids are taking this climate change seriously.
And you know what? One of the reason, and so I was speaking about being in a panel with DG Grossi, right? And he asked us, right, like why, like what's exciting about the industry? And like I told him, like for me, so I was born and raised in an island called Mauritius, southeast of Madagascar. So I did my high school there. I never heard about climate change, all these things. And then when I come here, you hear about all these. It's trending. It's an important issue we need to solve. And so I didn't have the chance either at high school, junior school, high school, or university level to learn a very important things. That's it's real. It's like there's lots of innovation. You can be a part of the solution. You can be engaged. So I'm like, I don't want other people to be like me, like not having learned about that till I'm 23, 24. So that's why I decided, okay, I want to do advocacy because one, I didn't know about nuclear. I didn't know about climate change. So me, by going or by helping people go, by helping organizations go to schools, go to universities, or even COP we speak, it's a way for me, for people not to turn like me, or kids not to turn like me.
Well, no, I think they should turn exactly like you, right, and be leaders in this area. So no, that's great to know. And but yeah, Veeshesh, this is the panel discussion. I really want to know more about it because Rafael Grossi, he is such an incredible leader in the industry, right? And every time I've heard him speak, the passion he has and just the drive and the vision he has for nuclear energy is just incredible, right? So really look up to him. I hope you're watching this. I actually have him as a friend on Facebook, so I'll send him a link to this afterward. It's like, who's this kid adding me on Facebook? But yeah, tell me about that panel discussion. How was that?
It was amazing. But to start, okay, it was Youth Day at the conference, so very focused. It was the youth time. It was the youth voice, right? That day was reserved for us, and it's great he found the time, first of all. And if when given he's your friend, I wanted to say congratulations to him because I know his country is now world champions. So congrats, muchachos. and it was great. So what was great about the event is that you see the diversity, right? We speak about how exciting to be, it's to be in nuclear, right? So Grossi was there, and then four youth, two on each side, different background, different country, and a different region. So on the left, I believe, medical doctor, PhD student, myself, like kind of in a control room setting, and then next to me, a communicator. So it shows the wide reach that nuclear had, right, in terms of what we do for jobs. Now, in terms of regions, we had Africa, we had Asia, we had Europe, and then we have North America, right? So that was very interesting. So he picked our brains on a lot of stuff that was happening. For example, he asked me about Ontario. He knew Ontario was a good example because people, he was like, so I guess he started the question. He's a very funny guy as well, which made us at ease and very energizing. And he said, so Ontario has everything in the plate and good menu as well, referring to like clean sources of power we have with hydro, nuclear being a big part of the base load here, right, complementing solar and wind. And he's like, tell me your secret. Tell me Ontario's secret.
Yeah,
How do you guys do it, right? And then we went like how we shut down the coal plant years ago, right? How we speaking about new nuclear, we engaging in conversation about having clean hydrogen from nuclear, the wind and solar going up, right? So he was very curious to learn about Ontario. And then on the other side, the PhD student was from California. She asked about what's happening to the California plant with the shutdown, how it was with the medicine, with the medical person. He asked about kind of program. What can he do to help more? Because the medicinal panelist was from Kenya, and then she's like, how can the IAEA be better and help you guys achieve what you want to achieve? So not only was he asking questions, but he was curious to see how can he help, right? How can he help? So always inspiring and inspiring. It was the first time I met him. I've heard him speak in person once at a WANO conference, but like shaking his hand and asking he asked some tough question as well, but like very question that's very pertinent, right? And I remember he asked me the other thing about again, like how can we do better? He took the experience from NAYG and from myself and kind of asked like how can we be better at explaining the good role nuclear has, right? Yeah.
So what was your response?
Spoke to him about, I told him like food is a good one to give at schools to grab attention, pizza. But no, again, I'm like the physical presence is important, but students remember the giveaways for sure, right? The giveaways is important, but again, like more content. So NAYGN, for example, have books for different grades, right? And you've seen it. We go to give books, but also my response to him was like, we need to start from the top, like for them to understand the problem, not go there and say, hey, nuclear is great, these sort of things. Start with like what's happening in the world, right? We have like, increasing energy demand. We need the energy to come from clean sources of power because we have global warming as well. Temperatures increasing, so you need capacity to be there. It has to be clean. And we have this exciting technology, nuclear. It complements solar. It complements wind. It's reliable 24/7. We got to start from there and not just go. I think before what we were doing, it's going to school, explaining how nuclear works, right? Without explaining what problem are we trying to solve out there, right? So having those two pieces, because I think even as a kid now, people, and I was speaking through my nephews, nieces, or friends who are in school, they understand the climate piece. They understand that there's increasing energy demand, right? So they know that. So leverage that and explain. Like we have a solution that already worked. Why don't we use that? So he liked the answer, I think.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. The pizza one would have been great as well, but
Yeah, yeah. I said the pizza. I think that's the biggest one, and especially if it's Domino's pizza, super attracts.
Domino's alright.
Domino's is alright. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's great that you mentioned these two aspects, right? That climate change piece coupled with, hey, here's how nuclear works, right? Because one without the other is a bit flawed, right? So, it's incredible to see that this is the perfect time for nuclear energy education to become mainstream, because climate change is that, is that force which is propelling people to really open up their minds and become technology agnostic, right? So tell me a little bit about that. Did you sense that, a little bit of flavor of that at this COP, or the last COP that came? Like, did you feel that momentum building, and did you see more and more people gaining interest in nuclear energy because of climate change?
Yeah, for sure, and not only at COP, like U.S. is doing their surveys. We were at the Nuclear Energy Assembly last year as well in Washington, and a couple of people came and presented on the rising nuclear interest, both across the Democratic front and the Republican front, right? And other countries are releasing similar kind of trends or data where there's an increasing support of nuclear. There'll never be 100% support, right? It's like politicians, right? If you're like 55, 60%, you should be happy. Don't aim for, even Obama got like 55 or 60% at best. So, anyways, so you see there's a growing interest, and I think lots of things sparked it. I think, for example, people are seeing what's happening in the world. So Europe last year, extreme heat wave across several countries, Spain, France, Italy, Africa, very prone again, like extreme drought in like several countries. Pakistan, we had the flooding that costed billions. So people are seeing like the impact. It's like before, people like 5 years, 6 years ago, people was like, oh yeah, climate change, I think it's true. It's true. Now it's not like I think, it's like it's happening. Yeah. So people are seeing that. I think that's helping, right? In terms of them, hey, we have the technology that works now. We'll figure out stuff later, right? About how can we be more efficient with renewable and stuff. But like right now, what do we have? So that's one. And the second piece, I think nuclear is playing a bigger part now in terms of going to schools, universities. That's how organizations such as NAYGN, Women in Nuclear, Young Generation Group across the world, Nuclear for Climate is doing, right? Going more to school. So that's helping increase the nuclear perception. And again, like, nuclear, it's always safety. It's like we always say, we're one accident away from our industry shutting down, right? But we've demonstrated that nuclear is very safe. Like, look at, like, in terms of safety, like the metrics we have, it's great. I don't even need to touch on it now, because people see that, right? They know, scientists, through the IPCC reports, which is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report. So they issue reports like peer-reviewed reports, etc. They said nuclear is clean, has to be part of the electricity mix, plays an important part of reaching net carbon zero. So people are reading reports that's been vetted, that's been peer-reviewed, that's coming from top-notch scientists. Like, can you say no? It's like, they see all these things now, and it's growing. I think there's a growing support, and tie that back from schools, from a local level to even COP, when people are coming, it's like, yeah, I think, again, like for me, the baseline, it was my first COP, but I think like a lot of people came in and said, okay, yeah, I see you guys playing a big role now.
Veeshesh, it seems like you've really had a life-changing experience, right, with being part of that initiative. And it's really changed almost like your worldview, right, when it comes to a lot of different areas. What are the top ways in which being a part of this has changed your life?
It's incredible. Like you don't think of it before when you sign up, right? You don't imagine like how kind of changing impact you have. But for me, like things that ways that impacted my life, it's like the people you meet, right? Different parts of the world, different cultures. It's a place to make friends as well. I've been in touch with so many friends from different conferences. So it's another bond. It's amazing. And again, like with the impact piece, everyone understand that. But in terms of how it changes my life, you feel that you are contributing to something that, oh yeah, I never thought in my day job I'll ever get to speak to a UN ambassador, to an IEA director general, to prime minister, right? Or to a CEO, right? You wouldn't get the chance, right? So that changes you because like the first time you meet a CEO or a high level person, it's like it's human, tendencies. Okay, yeah. Oh, it's we are speaking, so I'm like, afraid and stuff. But now it's it's when you speak to them, you know why you're speaking, and you have a goal, you have a vision. So these sort of experiences help you and highly encourage, right? It doesn't have to be at a big level, even at a small level. Try to advocate for something you're passionate about. And again, I'm technology neutral, so it doesn't have to be nuclear. If you're passionate about something else, about just go for it, right? It changes your life because speaking to different people, getting to know their perspective, it's life changing for sure.
Phenomenal. Veeshesh, thank you so much for chatting with us, and really appreciate this discussion. And for those that are watching, if they or listening in Spotify, if you want you want to give them some words as to how they can get involved with COP for the next climate change conference that's coming.
For sure, yeah. So a couple of call to action. So Osama, next week I'm checking with you if you've read the National Determined Contribution of Canada. So same for you guys. I think start with that because that connects you to what you are doing in your daily job or even in your life. Because see, again, like different people from different countries, or each countries have their own plans. Start with that. See how you fit into that, right? See what's your passion, where do you want to help, and go for it, right? Follow your gut feeling. That's a big thing, right? For me, sometimes when doing these roles, when signing up for stuff, I'm like, should I do it? Should I not do it? It's a good question to ask. At the end, I always follow my gut. If I feel like I have a good feeling, I'll do it. So go for it. Find something you're really passionate about. Could be anything, and just do it and see like the life changing things you'll get to do, and you'll be in one of Osama's podcasts in the future. Then, yeah. You know. So thanks again for having me, Osama. Again, like you as well, also for you, it's a pleasure watching your videos because we need people like you, like leaders, to kind of understand. Also, be able to communicate with non-technical person. I think that's key. That's what you are able to achieve because, for example, I put myself, I have a sister who is 7 years younger than me, right? Am I able to explain what I'm doing to her, right? If I think Osama, if I play an Osama video to her, she'll be able to understand. So we need people to be able to be like you, right? Be passionate, right? But also be able to explain in a very short, concise, precise way to the general public.
Awesome. No, thanks so much for inspiring us all with this conversation, and great learning about these experiences. And I encourage you to check out Veeshesh on LinkedIn and any other social medias. I'll attach in the description below.
Yeah, you don't have to follow me. That's fine. But Nuclear for Climate, do follow, and AYGN for sure. Two great things that you can kind of see what the industry have to offer. And if you are interested in joining the movement, please send a message to myself or Osama, and we'll set you up.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Veeshesh. Appreciate this discussion.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, take care. See you guys.